everywhere. GBS.
A very good evening and thank you for joining GPS News at 9. My name is Stephen George and our sign language interpreter tonight is Paul Madenge. And now, the National Assembly has dismissed an attempt by Grassroots Oversight Initiative to initiate a motion against Speaker Moses Wetangula, citing procedural limitations under parliamentary rules. In a letter dated on the 7th of February, the Clerk of the National Assembly, Samuel Njoroge, informed the petitioners that parliamentary rules do not allow the House to discuss the Speaker's conduct unless a substantive motion is introduced by a sitting member of Parliament.
The National Assembly has rejected an attempt by a lobby to discuss the conduct of Speaker Moses Wetangula. The House dismissed the push by the Grassroots Oversight Initiative, citing procedural limitations under parliamentary rules. In a letter dated 7th February 2025, Clerk of the National Assembly Samuel Njoroge informed the petitioners that parliamentary rules prohibit discussions on Speaker's conduct unless a substantive motion is introduced by a sitting member of Parliament. The clerk further clarified that only an MP who is aggrieved by the Speaker's conduct has the legal standing to move such a motion, rendering the Grassroots Oversight Initiative's claim. This response effectively shuts down the group's attempt to challenge the Speaker's leadership through external petitions or interventions. The letter underscores the procedural barriers that shield the Speaker from direct public censure, reinforcing the legislative requirement that only MPs can initiate such a debate within the House. The Grassroots Oversight Initiative, which had sought to challenge Wetangula's conduct, is yet to respond to the National Assembly's decision. However, the rejection highlights a procedural deadlock for any external groups attempting to influence internal parliamentary affairs without the backing of legislators. The lobby group had on February 6, 2025, returned to the clerk, submitting a notice of motion against Wetangula following his declaration of Kenya Kwanza as the majority party in the House. The Nakuru-based lobby sought to have the Speaker censored over what he termed as violation of High Court ruling that annulled his 2022 declaration of Kenya Kwanza as the majority party. Hilary Kabila, GBS News, Nairobi.
The country has been thrown into mourning following the passing of Malava Constituency Member of Parliament, Honorable Moses Malulu Injendi. Member of Parliament Malulu died today while undergoing treatment at Aga Khan Hospital in Nairobi. The Clerk of the National Assembly confirmed the news but was yet to issue an official statement by press time. Malulu was the Member of Parliament for Malava Constituency and Vice Chairman of the Departmental Committee on Education and Research. Injendi was serving his third term as a Member of Parliament, having served continuously since 2013. He was a dedicated and passionate representative who served his constituents with unwavering commitment and integrity. Tributes have continued to pour in from fellow lawmakers, constituents, and leaders across the political divide. A section of Mount Kenya leaders are now urging the former Prime Minister to join hands with the former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua after Odinga failed to secure the African Union chairmanship position in what Gachagua's allies state on Odinga's having been deceived by President William Ruto. The lawmakers allied to Gachagua, led by George Kimbori, promised to unite with Azimio leaders and ensure that court decisions are observed in the country. Davis Karani now reports.
We now must respect the outcome. He himself conceded and respected the outcome. President Ruto on the floor of the House also conceded and said we respect the outcome, and they all affirmed to support.
It was one of the major declarations that a majority of Kenyans waited eagerly looking for the son of the most powerful state in the East African region limp into the top Africa's position, but hopes and happiness turned somber after Odinga lost to Djibouti's Mahmoud Yusuf Ali as Odinga conceded defeat.
We accept the results and have congratulated my competitor who has won, and I wish him the best.
Odinga's conceding defeat was received in the country differently as he defended President William Ruto, whom he gave thanks for overwhelmingly supporting him in every move that he made in the continent. But after Odinga lost to the Sun from Djibouti in the AUC bid, a section of the UDA parliamentarians have urged him now to unite with the former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua to oust President William Ruto from the office.
Tunamwalika Raila Amolo Odinga arudi katika taifa letu la Kenya. Akuje tushikane mkono. Tuweze kukung'atua katika mamlaka. Sababu tumeona ukiwa mfisadi, ukiwa muongo, na kama umeweza kudanganya wachungaji, umeweza kudanganya wa Kenya, umeenda ukadanganya Raila Amolo Odinga ya kwamba atapata kiti ya AU ambayo hakuipata.
This is after all parliamentarians allied to the former deputy president were whipped of their parliamentary committee positions following their vibrant critics to the Kenya Kwanza administration and have promised to join the Azimio coalition party led by Honorable Junet Mohamed in the National Assembly to oust the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Moses Masika Wetangula, for defying the court order's decision on Azimio being the majority party.
This is not the end. We have withdrawn our members from the House Business Committee, and that's not the end.
Let us respect court orders. Court orders are not supposed to be debated and a question put in the House on court orders.
It is going to be messy, it is going to be noisy, and it's going to have casualties. I promise you. And we can see it is getting smelly.
Will this clarion call to unite with the Azimio party by Gachagua's allies be achieved? And if yes, will Odinga, who saved Ruto's administration from the Gen Z's wrath, work with Gachagua to oust Ruto from the office? They say in politics everything is possible and there are no permanent friends or enemies. For now, let us give it time. Davis Karani, GBS News, Nairobi.
Muhammad Ali Yusuf has become the African Union Commission new and the 5th chair since the inception of African Union from its previous organization of African Unity. Who else has ever sat at the helm of the continent's union? Take a look.
They put a number of mechanisms and structure around this flagship program so that peace becomes a reality on our continent.
Muhammad Ali Yusuf is the new kid in the block, having been elected the new African Union Commission chair on Saturday, the 15th February 2024. But first and foremost, I go down the history lane of African Union Commission previous chairs since its inception. Alpha Omar Konare became the first African Union Commission chair on the 16th of September 2003. Konare was the former Mali president, studied international and development studies in Geneva, Switzerland. Then came in Jinping from Gabon on the 28th of April 2008. He was the leading fiercest critic of the former Gabon President Omar Bongo. 2016, after having retired from AUC chair, Ping vied for presidency to unseat Bongo, who had ruled then for about 5 decades, but Ping was unsuccessful. On the 15th of October 2012, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma became the first ever woman to head the Continental Organization.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
A medical doctor by profession, Dlamini Zuma was wife to the former South African President Jacob Zuma. The outgoing chair, Musa Mahamat Faki, hails from Chad, came the AUC chair on the 14th of March 2017 and was the former Prime Minister of Chad from the year 2003 to the year 2005.
To serve Africa, to dream for its youth for whom we have not done enough and for whom we must do a lot, because after all, it is they who count today and more so tomorrow.
Between 2008 and 2017, he served as Chad's Foreign Affairs Minister. Faki is both a politician and a diplomat. He was born in the year 1960 and is a member of the Patriotic Salvation Movement Party and had studied law in Brazzaville, the Republic of Congo.
Certainly I've made mistakes. Maybe here and there I have weakened and made mistakes and missed opportunities to do better. I would like to apologize and ask forgiveness if my shortcomings have caused any individual or collective harm.
And now Muhammad Ali Yusuf of Djibouti has taken over. Been managed to successfully floor Raila Amolo Odinga of Kenya and Richard Radiomantrata of Madagascar.
The first structure is the African peace and security architecture. And then we have the strategy that we all know, silencing the guns. And to support this strategy, the African Union put in place a number of mechanisms. One of them is the Peace and Security Council. The other one is the Committee of Elders, the Committee of Chief of Staff. We have the Peace Fund, and we can rely on every kind of mechanism. So why?
Yusuf has been Djibouti's foreign minister since 2005 and has previously served as Djibouti's ambassador to Egypt. Top on his priority, as he says, is tackling bad governance in some African states. Victor Dun, GBS News.
Journalists have taken to the streets of Taita Taveta County in a peaceful demonstration. Their protest comes in response to remarks made by the County Health Minister Gifton Mkaya, which they claim are not only misleading but also intended to damage the credibility of the media. Susan Nganga with more. It is time for us to take a short break. Keep your feedback streaming into our social media platform at GBS TV Africa. The SMS line is 244. We'll be right back.
So through the four gospel books, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, John, we can know the heart of Jesus in depth. And the Jesus that we can feel him through the scriptures, and I'm very thankful about that. Jesus Christ came to this earth for our sins. He carried our sins. And he was crucified, and he received the punishment for sins. And he was put into the tomb and resurrected in 3 days. This is the gospel that we speak. About how Jesus died for our sins. The purpose of Jesus being crucified. He was crucified to pay for our sins. And through Jesus being crucified, clearly our sins have been washed clean. However, unfortunately, many people still say that they are sinners.
Hello, kids. Did you know a year has 31,557,600 seconds? Why do you think so? Exactly. There are 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day, and 365 and 25 days in a year. We count the extra 0.25 because of leap year. When you multiply all these numbers together, you get a huge number of seconds. That's why a year feels long, but time still flies when you are having fun.
AS and A levels is a qualification program that is advanced. That is after one has completed the high GCSE program, then they advise to continue for AS and A level. AS typically is a 1-year program, and A levels is done in the 2nd year after completing the AS level. And this one equips the student with the knowledge that is recommended for the university and also by employers outside the countries or within the country.
everywhere. GBS.
Welcome back. Journalists have taken to the streets of Taita Taveta County in a peaceful demonstration. Their protest comes in response to remarks made by County Health Minister Gifton Mkaya, which they claim are not only misleading but also intended to damage the credibility of the media. Susan Nganga with more.
Journalists gathered for a peaceful protest. Their grievances stemming from statements made by the County Health Minister Gifton Mkaya on February 3rd, in which he alleged that members of the press solicit bribes to report on the county's ailing health sector. The journalist strongly condemned these claims, calling them baseless and defamatory. They argue their duty is to inform the public about the true state of affairs, including the deteriorating healthcare system in Taita Taveta. They say their investigative work has exposed critical challenges in the sector, something the county leadership appears unwilling to address. Under Article 35 of the Kenyan Constitution, citizens have a right to access information. The protesting journalist insists that any attempts to silence the media amount to violation of press freedom and the public's rights to know. Susan Nganga, GBS News.
Former Kiambu Governor Ferdinand Waititu has appealed his conviction in a 588 million graft case challenging the 12-year prison sentence or 52.5 million fine handed down by a lower court. Waititu, through his lawyer, has also applied for a bail during the appeal process, citing concerns that serving part of the sentence before the appeal is heard could render the process meaningless. His wife Susan Dungu was sentenced to 1 year in prison or 500 shillings fine for a similar charge.
Kiambu Governor Ferdinand Waititu has filed an appeal challenging a recent ruling by a lower court that sentenced him to 12 years in prison or a 52 million fine. This ruling is part of a 588 million graft case in which Waititu was convicted. Waititu, through his lawyer Danstan Omari, argues that he is aggrieved by the court's findings and has moved to the High Court to contest the verdict.
We have filed a substantive appeal. This appeal raises over 57 grounds to ensure that Babayao is free to continue his politics as this matter proceeds. Remember, Babayao is a politician. Babayao is a citizen of this country. Babayao is protected by the constitutional provision of this country. This is not the first time the High Court and the Court of Appeal has released people who have been convicted by the ethics and anti-corruption courts.
The appeal was filed shortly after the sentencing, and Waititu has also applied for bail where the appeal is being heard. His legal team contends that the judicial process will take a considerable amount of time, and serving part or all the sentence before the appeal is determined will render the process meaningless. Waititu claims that such a development will lead to irreparable prejudice. In his application, Waititu highlights his concern over the lengthy judicial process, asserting that if successful, the appeal could be rendered worthless, with Waititu having already served part or all of the sentence. In addition to seeking bail, Waititu has requested that the bond security he previously deposited in the Nairobi anti-corruption case number 22 be used as a continuing bond to secure his release. His legal team maintains that he is entitled to bail and that the appeal raises substantial legal questions that require judicial review. They argue that his release will not interfere with the administration of justice and that he remains committed to complying with any conditions set by the court. The sentencing, which took place at Milimani Law Courts on Thursday, also imposed political ban on Waititu, barring him from vying for any political seat for 7 years. His wife Susan Ndung'u was handed a 1-year prison term or a fine of 500,000 Kenya shillings. Both Waititu and his wife were convicted on graft-related charges, although they were acquitted on 3 counts of money laundering. Tizatiengo, GBS News.
Deputy President Kithure Kindiki has reiterated the government's obligation to universal health coverage (UHC) by highlighting key measures and progress made in its implementation. Speaking at a high-level consultative forum on the status of implementation today, he highlighted the enrollment of 19.5 million Kenyans in the Taifa Care program. He also addressed concerns over the impact of suspended U.S. foreign aid on healthcare services, assuring that contingency measures were in place.
Today, Deputy President Kithure Kindiki addressed the high-level consultative forum on the status of implementation of universal health coverage, reiterating the government commitment to ensuring that all Kenyans achieve access to medical coverage. According to him, UHC was not just a policy goal, but also moral obligation, and government was eager to turn it into reality as soon as possible. Kindiki indicated that tremendous progress had been made, indicating that 19.5 million Kenyans were already catered for through the Taifa Care program under the SHA.
In terms of registration, we seem to be making good progress. 19.5 million Kenyans are already enrolled. However, the situation as it is to firm up on the contributions. And as many of us are aware that at the moment we need to do some work to make sure that as many people as possible who have registered are making contributions.
He further stated that the free primary health care is now provided, but he acknowledged the need to raise contribution to the fund in order to cover full care, including treatment and referrals. In response to complaints of recent policy decisions on financing by some partners in development, including the recent temporary suspension of U.S. foreign assistance programs, Kindiki assured the nation that the government had made previous to ensure against interruption to the provision of necessary health services.
As you're aware, the health sector, part of the health sector is financed by development partners. Some of the development partners have made certain policy changes recently. I just want to assure the nation that we remain focused to make sure that any policy decisions by our development partners does not affect the delivery of healthcare services.
He further said that the government was exploring the means testing tool to ensure that it would accurately portray the needs of the people.
We are reviewing the means testing tool, and I think the ministry will be giving us progress of where we are. In the next few days, we will have a new means testing tool to make sure that the tool is accurate, objective, and helps us leverage on all the fundamentals to make sure that we provide quality health care to the people of Kenya.
Deborah Barasa, Minister of Health, stated that one of the key initiatives being implemented was the revision of the benefit and tariff package under the Social Health Authority.
Regarding the social health insurance funds, then we had the benefits that are there, which is inpatient maternity, renal, hemato-oncology, mental, surgical imaging, among others. Incorporated and bold is overseas treatment, which again has been highlighted, but it was actually incorporated in year 1. But those that were included in the SHIF included outpatient and oral health dental services.
In response to public concern, she announced that the daily funding allocation for intensive care unit services had been increased from 4,480 to Kenya shillings 28,000. Additionally, Baraza revealed that allocation for oncology services had been raised from Kenya shillings 400,000 to 550,000, providing an extra Kenya shillings 150,000 to support cancer patients in accessing essential treatment. Kindiki acknowledged that universal health coverage was an ambitious and expensive endeavor, but he believed that with collective efforts and coordination between the national and county government, Kenya would succeed in offering quality health care to all its citizens. Paris Kigo, GBS News, Nairobi.
Health Cabinet Secretary Deborah Baraza has today proposed an increase in daily funding for the Intensive Care Unit ICU and cancer-related treatment by government in a bid to help Kenyans offset the high medical bills they face when seeking healthcare services. Speaking during a high-level consultative forum on the status of the implementation of universal health coverage hosted by Deputy President Kithure Kindiki at his official residence in Nairobi, Karen, Baraza revealed that the government had revised the benefits provided to Kenyans. Now, according to the CES, these benefits were part of the changes the government is implementing within the Social Health Authority and the Social Health Insurance Fund, packages to enable Kenyans to access affordable healthcare services. The revision means that the government will adjust the funds allocated to ICU patients by more than 24,000 shillings, up from current 4,480 shillings. Additionally, cancer patients seeking oncology services at accredited facilities will enjoy an additional allocation of 150,000 shillings, up from the current 400,000 shillings per day.
There's additional funding through the supplementary budget to facilitate, number one, an increase in funding for ICU. Previously, we were at 4,480. We are happy to report that now ICU will benefit from 28,000 Kenya shillings per day. Equally, that's good news. So again, for oncology services, we are happy. Previously, we were at 150,000, and following concerns from the public, we have been able to increase. Sorry, we're at 400, but we have increased to 550,000, an additional 150 for the oncology cases. So again, that is a good point for us. And after review, the revised benefits will go through the legal process for gazettement.
The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, EACC, has arrested a senior prosecution counsel from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions in Kilgoris over allegations of soliciting 50,000 shillings bribe. This marks the latest in a series of high-profile arrests as the EACC continues its crackdown on corruption within Kenya's public sector. Hours after the arrest, the ODPP placed the accused officer on compulsory leave, reinforcing its commitment to tackling corruption at all levels of government.
The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission has arrested a principal prosecution counsel from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions in Kilgoris on charges of soliciting a bribe. This arrest is part of an ongoing crackdown on corrupt senior public officers. The suspect was apprehended after allegedly demanding a 50,000 bribe from a businessman in exchange for expediting a court case. Following negotiations, the amount was reduced to 40,000. However, instead of complying with the request, the businessman reported the matter to the EACC, who in return launched an operation that led to the officer's arrest. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions placed the suspect on compulsory leave. In a statement released, the ODPP reiterated its commitment to a zero-tolerance policy on corruption, confirming that the senior prosecutor, who is the principal prosecution counsel in Kilgoris, will remain on leave pending internal investigations. This marks the latest action in the EACC's efforts to address corruption in Kenya's public sector, especially among senior law enforcement officers. This arrest comes shortly after the apprehension of Likoni District Criminal Investigation Officer Charles Onyango, who was arrested for allegedly accepting a 20,000 bribe. Charles Onyango was charged in the Mombasa Anti-Corruption Court under Section 6 and Section 18 of the Bribery Act of 2016, which criminalizes the acceptance of bribes as part of improper performance of official duties. The EACC continues to target corruption in various government institutions, with reports indicating that the National Police Service and the National Transport and Safety Authority are among the most corrupt agencies in the country. The Commission has received over 5,000 complaints related to corruption within these institutions, with more than 534 cases under investigation. Additionally, over 126 files which completed investigations are set to be forwarded to the ODPP for further action. The EACC is also pursuing over 400 cases related to the forfeiture of corruptly acquired assets valued at approximately 49.5 billion. The ongoing actions by the EACC highlight the government's commitment to tackling corruption and ensure accountability in public service. Triza Tiengo, GBS News.
We are taking a short break. Keep your feedback streaming into our social media platforms at GBS TV Africa. The SMS line is 21144. We'll be right back.
Today, it's that day that I would like us just to have that conversation on monthly matters.
Let's talk of Mama Fua, who like akifanya shughuli zake hapa kule has more or less that amount.
Yeah, so on that part, I would say this. When you are doing your savings, you can have, we normally talk about having 3 buckets. So we will just talk about income, budgeting, saving, and investment. Those are the 4 areas we will look at.
Happens to those like me who are planning to retire early.
We are basically looking at our incomes. We also talk about savings and investment. So those are the 3. I will not add the 4th one, which we all shy of talking about. So I would say it's not how much I am earning, but it is how much I set aside. So
the Youth Hub show that gets a groove on. We have so many topics lined up for you guys.
Can you survive without internet?
No, I can't. Siwezi survive bila internet mimi.
Hii ni kama kuambia mtu mwenye alikuwa amezoea kushinda na nguo, mwambie toa nguo ushinde. She's still like Tito who believes in miracles. Don't
you believe in miracles? Don't you believe in miracles?
If you're in love, akili inafungika na macho. You won't see anything negative in the relationship.
So films, I can get funding to get a lot of time to do pre-production, so that when I'm shooting, costume nilishapanga, kila watu wako wanajua navaje, shooting location, like that process ya kwenda ku secure location, kwenda kwenye video secure location, you get and like wow, this location ikeza pata,
this is where it will all happen.
It makes you happy.
Kuwa na vitu mingi sana, mapanga le nini, tunachikisa hizo issues zimekuwa zinachocha sana. Tunataka kutuka hivyo tu bila hii mambo ya mneti.
Are you ready? So guess the logo. Reveal.
Cadillac.
Cadillac. Kwa nasema Cadillac. Tunapenda watu yeye. We love communicating, we love welcoming people.
Internet ilikuja kutupa mangiza.
The gift of a man will place you in a company of great men. Never forget mlango. What 2 things can you never eat for breakfast?
The fact that I started selling art, that's where the interest came in. Yeah, they know this thing can pay.
And who has been your biggest cheerleader in your art journey?
My biggest?
Cheerleader. Ule mwenye anakuwa.
Oh yeah, IG, I'm artist Victor Mtua. Facebook is Victor Mtua. Of course, the first time I sold my art at relatively 50K.
Ati?
Time niliuza art yangu like 50K.
Oh, Victor, kwanza before hata uoneshane watu paintings zako, nataka kuuliza, if I was to pay you, nikwambie like usiwahi chora tena, usiwahi paint tena, will you? Unaweza acha? You are famous, what will your stage name be?
My stage name?
Ungekuwa pale kwa stage, ungekuwa unajiintroduce kana.
And welcome back now to international news. Witnesses and the armed group said on Sunday Rwandan-backed M23 rebels advanced into the center of Bukavu in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, meeting little resistance from government troops as Congo accused Rwanda of ignoring calls for a ceasefire. The rebels have been seeking to seize the commercial hub since taking the city of Goma in late January. Bukavu's apparent capture deals a further blow to Kinshasa's authority in the east of the country.
A crowd of civilians celebrated the arrival of M23 rebel in Bukavu city with chants and cheers. It is the second regional capital city in the Democratic Republic of Congo that the rebels have taken since early January, when they launched a lightning speed offensive on Goma in neighboring North Kivu.
Kusema chochote ile kuchafu kitachukua muda, lakini pamoja na nyinyi inawezekana. Na watu wenye wanapenda disorder wanakuwa mingi sana. Wenye wanapenda kuathiri wanakuwa wamoja.
M23 marched south into Bukavu on Saturday, although conflicting reports initially made it difficult to confirm the extent of its advance. Congolese soldiers and allied troops from Burundi had reportedly retreated from Bukavu military bases on Friday, the same day that M23 took control of a regional airport around 30 kilometers outside of Bukavu. Reports emerged of sporadic gunfire and the looting of the World Food Program depot and supermarkets in Bukavu. Despite the chaotic scenes, most streets of the city were actually deserted for hours as residents hid in their home from looters and the rebels. Faced with the growing risk of a regional war, the international community has stepped up its course for de-escalation and a ceasefire. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, retaliated during an African Union summit on Saturday to avoid regional escalation at all costs.
Regional escalation must be avoided at all costs. There is no military solution. The deadlock must end, the dialogue must begin, and the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the DRC must be respected.
The M23 takeover of Bukavu marks a significant escalation in the conflict, sparking both celebration and fear among residents. With rising regional tension and international call for de-escalation, the situation remains volatile. Paris Kigo, GBS News.
Deadly stabbing spree in Austrian town of Villach has left a 14-year-old boy dead and 5 others injured. Authorities have confirmed the suspect, a 23-year-old Syrian asylum seeker, had sworn allegiance to the Islamic State and was radicalized online.
Tragedy struck the peaceful town of Villach, Austria, as a knife attack claimed the life of a 14-year-old boy and left 5 others wounded, 3 of whom remain in intensive care. The suspect, a 23-year-old Syrian asylum seeker, was arrested just minutes after the attack. Authorities revealed chilling details about the suspect, who had sworn allegiance to the Islamic State and was radicalized on the internet. The IS flag was discovered in his apartment, and police says he recorded himself pledging loyalty to the group. The attack would not have been far worse if not the heroic action of another Syrian, a food delivery driver, who stopped the attacker by ramming him with his vehicle. Interior Minister Jihad Kana condemned the attack, describing the violence as senseless and heartbreaking. He also called for tougher measures to seek asylum seekers, emphasizing the need for a mass check. Though IS have not claimed responsibility, the incidents aligns with the recent call from the group for lone wolf attacks in Europe and America. The tragedy has fueled political tensions in Austria, with the far-right Freedom Party seizing on the attack to renew their calls for stricter immigration policies. Party leader Herbert stated, no migration could commit crimes if they weren't here. The attack came amid this growing political unrest in Austria, as centrist parties struggled to form a government after September's election, and immigration continued to be a decisive issue across Europe. In Villach, residents are grappling with shock and fear, while authorities work to bring justice to the victim and their families. Joe Korea, GBS News.
Today, a court in Singapore found Pritam Singh, the opposition leader of the Workers' Party, guilty for lying to the parliamentary committee. Singh was given 2 fines of $7,000. Analysts have suggested that the ruling party will most likely win parliamentary seats in the upcoming elections, which is scheduled in November 2025. Meanwhile, China enacted their joint readiness patrol around Taiwan following a Canadian warship sailing through the waterway. Here is more on the scene.
In India, a stampede tragedy seems all too familiar. Tragedy has rocked the main railway station in New Delhi, where travelers were heading to the Prayagraj for the Mahakumbh festival, a religious pilgrimage. Passengers were busy waiting to board the train. However, the available infrastructure could not withstand the influx of people who are eager to head to the pilgrimage. At least 18 people were killed in this tragedy, the youngest being 7 years old, while the eldest being 79 years old. Police and rescue workers were at the scene trying to control the congestion of people.
The crowd started pushing and people were falling over us. My wife passed away on the spot.
Stampede is a frequent incident that has happened many times in India.
2 trains had been delayed, leading to an increase of people gathered on the platforms.
Last month, 40 people were killed in another stampede that has happened in Prayagraj due to the pilgrimage. It is estimated more than 100 million people will attend this pilgrimage. Meanwhile, the ceasefire in Gaza remains. Hamas released 3 Israeli hostages and Israel released 369 Palestinian prisoners. Last week, the ceasefire was in a vulnerable state where Hamas accused Israel of violating the ceasefire agreements by refusing aid to enter Gaza and their continuation of killing civilians. Israel and US leaders gave a stern warning to Hamas that the violence would reignite in the enclave. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Marco Rubio visited Israel and met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He visited the Holocaust Museum and delivered this statement.
This ancient poison called anti-Semitism, which has plagued mankind for centuries, has visited us now again in this new century. It hides behind geopolitics. It embeds itself in international organizations, in the curriculums of our colleges and universities, in the voices of some who hide in social media and even openly espouse this ancient poison.
The question remains, how can India's limited infrastructure overcome the robust population of 1.4 billion people? Can the government mitigate such avoidable risk from occurring again? Can the ceasefire agreement in Gaza continue without any disagreements? Only time will tell. This is Abdi Hamid Ali, GBS News.
Sudan's ongoing conflict between the Rapid Support Forces and the Sudanese Armed Forces continues to take a devastating toll on civilians, with the latest reports indicating the RSF assault on famine-stricken Zanzam displacement camp in Darfur. Now, this attack underscores the worsening humanitarian crisis in the region, where millions are already suffering from food shortages, displacement, and lack of basic services.
Sudan's Rapid Support Forces have attacked the famine-stricken Zamzam displacement camp in Darfur, worsening an already dire humanitarian crisis as the paramilitary group seeks to tighten its grip on the region while losing ground to the army in Khartoum.
There is opposite exodus from Zamzam to Al-Fashir right now. Opposite migration from Zamzam to Al-Fashir right now. Since it started this about the 8th attack in Al-Fashir, the death toll is up to now recorded 6 women, 8 children, 9 men, 2 organizations workers.
The Rapid Support Forces, a paramilitary group that emerged from the notorious Janjaweed militias, has been consolidating its power in Darfur while facing setbacks in Khartoum. Despite losing ground in the capital, the group has maintained a stronghold in western Sudan, where violence against civilians has been widely documented. Reports suggest that the attack on Zamzam camp was part of a broader strategy to assert dominance over the region, further exacerbating tensions and deepening the humanitarian disaster. Since the outbreak of war in April 2023, the conflict has displaced more than 1/5 of Sudan population and left half of the country facing severe hunger. Civilians in Darfur who have long endured cycles of ethnic violence and political instability are among the hardest hit. The international community has repeatedly called for an end to hostilities, but efforts to broker a ceasefire have largely failed, with both sides unwilling to negotiate and civilians bearing the brunt of the violence. Sudan's crisis appears far from resolution, and the humanitarian toll is only expected to worsen. Paris Kigo, GBS News.
A deadly storm has struck Kentucky, leaving at least 8 people dead and thousands of homes in darkness. Among the victims are a mother and her 7-year-old child swept away by floodwaters in Hart County. Rescue efforts are underway as the state faces one of the worst weather disasters in a decade.
A powerful storm tore through Kentucky over the weekend, bringing historic flooding and devastation. The tragic loss of life includes a mother and her 7-year-old child, whose car was carried away by raging floodwaters in Hart County. Hart County Coroner Tony Roberts confirmed the heartbreaking incident in Boynville on Saturday night. In southern Kentucky, a 73-year-old man was also found dead in floodwaters as severe weather battered the region. This storm is being described as one of the most severe in Kentucky's recent history, dumping over 6 inches of rain and knocking out power to nearly 39,000 homes. Wind and continued rainfall is expected to worsen the situation. Rescue crew have conducted over 1,000 operations, saving stranded residents from flooded homes and vehicles. Despite these efforts, the death toll may rise as search and rescue operation continues. A state of emergency has been declared and federal aid has been approved to help affected areas recover. Governor Besha has urged residents to stay off flooded roads, saying, "This is the search and rescue phase. Stay safe, stay alive." As Kentucky faces days of challenging weather ahead, rescue teams remain on high alert, putting their lives on line to protect others. Jay Kura, GBS News.
The French President Emmanuel Macron will host an emergency European summit and invite European leaders to discuss the Russia-Ukraine war. This comes after a U.S. special envoy has said that Europe will have no role in the negotiating table to end the war. Abdi reports.
Divisions between Europe and the US has grown to new heights when one of the US Special Envoy to Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, said in a press conference that Europe will not have a seat at the table for the negotiation talks to end the Russia-Ukraine war.
I said I'm a school of realism. I think that's not going to happen. But I said that's one of the reasons I'm here talking to people. One of the reasons we're going out, we're doing it, to making sure that their positions are well known, that when we go into these positions, they're well stated. Because we're looking at, you can have the Ukrainians, the Russians, and clearly the Americans at the table talking.
The divisions between Europe and the US couldn't be more staggering when US Vice President J.D. Vance attacked Europe in a speech that shocked European leaders.
In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat. I really do believe that allowing our citizens to speak their mind will make them stronger still. Which of course brings us back to Munich, where the organizers of this very conference have banned lawmakers representing populist parties on both the left and the right from participating in these conversations.
In retaliation, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius had this to say.
This democracy was called into question earlier by the U.S. Vice President for the whole of Europe. He spoke of the cancellation of democracy, and if I understood him correctly, he compared conditions in parts of Europe with those in authoritarian regimes. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not acceptable.
Due to the tensions rising between the two continents that were allies for almost a century, French President Emmanuel Macron has called upon leaders to attend an emergency summit to talk about Ukraine and the future of European security. Contradiction in the Trump administration is evident. While the Trump's envoy to Ukraine stated Europe will not be part of the negotiation process, Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated in the Munich Security Press Conference that both Ukraine and Europe will join the peace talks. Rubio will arrive in Saudi Arabia today to discuss issues relating to Gaza with Saudi leaders, while meeting with Russian officials is scheduled for tomorrow. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky expressed his dissatisfaction with Trump calling Putin and suggesting Ukraine to make concessions and give up their right to reclaim their territories under Russian occupation.
There is something at the table, but not on our table. So I didn't see any invitations, envoys, and etc. from Ukraine to meet with some other envoys, and it's something strange for me to speak in this case and this format if before we don't have any negotiation between us and our strategic partners. As I remember, Russia is not our strategic partner.
While Zelensky dismissed any proposed mineral deals with the U.S., he stated it did not contain any future security guarantees for Ukraine. Reports emerged today that the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer will deploy UK peacekeeping troops in Ukraine ahead of the emergency summit in Paris. He further stated that the UK will pledge to deliver security guarantees for Ukraine, while today a Russian court has fined Google $41,530 for hosting content on YouTube detailing instructions for Russian soldiers to surrender to Ukrainian military. Russia accused Google and other technological platforms of spreading fake propaganda against the Putin regime. Trump, being an unconventional leader, has stirred Europe into divisions and uncertainty regarding their future as Europe plans to increase their defense budget after Trump's administration stated they won't protect Europe from any future threats from Russia. But will the war that has lasted for almost 3 years come to an end? Does the division between Europe and the Trump administration signal the death of the proposed peace deal? Will Europe come up with a plan to counter threats from Russia in the future? Only time will tell. This is Abdi Hamid Ali, GBS News.
And that's all we had for you tonight at GBS News at 9. It is always a pleasure having you on board. Let's do this again next time, same channel. My name is Stephen George, and our sign language interpreter tonight has been Paul Madenge. Have yourself a wonderful night.